Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
It is our basic human right to be forgotten.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Hello and welcome to Occultae Veritatis. My name is Sage Murray, along with
Ood Gallifrey
and Richard Bigley.
Joining us in studio
is our
not in studio. Sorry,
I'm in a studio. I have a microphone that counts, right?
Yeah, okay. We're all in a studio. We are all social distancing.
Yeah, we're just in separate studios.
We are, yes. I'm in my living room. All right, so with all the bullshit happening in the world, I decided to choose a much more ridiculous topic to research. Before we get started on what is almost certainly going to be the fluffiest episode I will ever do, let's have some poison.
So, what's your poison?
What's your
poison?
I want that on my phone. Okay, so I am drinking Jackson Triggs Merlot because that's what my husband bought me, and it's fine. It's from a box.
Like a juice box, right?
Like a giant juice box. If you finish off the whole box, you can blow up the bladder and use it as a pillow.
Is that coming from personal experience there, Sage? Or?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
I am drinking Two Towns Cider House Pacific Pineapple Cider. I am not sure if I've done this one before or not. It's 5% alcohol. I'm out of beer, so I have gotten into cider, and there's nothing more reckless and irresponsible than a man in the depths of a cider binge. So
I love it.
And it's made with Costa Rica gold pineapples and freshly pressed Northwest apples. I acquired this can after, I had visited Leon Filger's parents at their, trailer campsite sort of thing in Washington. And we went to a bar at some town nearby, and they had this on tap. And then after tasting it and really enjoying it, I ended up going to Seattle and then combing Seattle looking for a place that sold it, and then brought it back across the border with me.
So this is a near and dear to your heart kind of cider.
It sounds delicious.
It was an ambitious venture, because when I went to Seattle, Mrs. Richard Bigley and I we took a train there from Bellingham, and then we're on foot the whole time through Seattle until we found it. And basically we had to do all the touristy things. We walked around by foot and walked to the Space Needle and then walked to the hotel, and everything was just walking. So to carry like all the, a bunch of we wouldn't just buy 6. Like, you got to load the bag up with the legal limit you can bring across the border. Mm-hmm. So that is what we did, and then had to hightail it to the train station on the complete opposite end of what I swear to God, it was the complete opposite end of the city, and run to make our train departure back to Bellingham. I'm saying though, and that's the great story of this. It is apparently 170 calories per can and a total of 12 grams of carbohydrates. That's weird that it says 12 grams of carbohydrates on the can, even though it was bought in the U.S. Like, I would have expected, like, you know, some sort of not metric thing. But it is what it is, so there you have it.
Aren't they using, like, penny weights down there or something?
My car gets, like, 19 rods per hogshead.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Right.
Did you guys end up going to Kurt? Is it like the bench right by Kurt Cobain's house, where he died?
No, we did not make it on that trip. It was Mrs. Richard Bigley's first time in Seattle, and so it was a lot of the more easily accessible, right, kind of by the waterfront sort of thing. Kind of walk along the waterfront and go get sucked into all the like touristy things there, you know, the aquarium and the big wheel and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Me and Mr. Sage Murray's names are in that bench. I'm just wondering if you'd seen them.
Not yet.
And we'll probably also do an episode on them at some point, because there's some controversy as to whether Kurt Cobain killed himself or whether he was set up by Courtney. But yeah, that's a tale for another day.
It is indeed.
There's even songs about that.
Is there? Interesting.
Yeah.
What else is everyone else drinking? Or smoking, as Ood is currently doing?
I am drinking Bailey's out of the same mug that says life is fucking relentless with a crab smoking a cigarette.
I was half expecting you to say out of a shoe.
None of my shoes are waterproof enough, and I don't really want to down an entire rubber boot's worth of Bailey's right now.
I am drinking... I'm smoking Trainwreck. I've been smoking Trainwreck all night, which is the strain I have. And I'm drinking a little hemp honey shine. And I tried to look on the bottle to see what other information there is, but there isn't. It's green in color, green enough to be proudly accepted on St. Paddy's Day. Tastes a little like vodka, but it's pretty damn good.
Well, we had that with the 7-Up.
Mercury.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
stuff
that
right.
Lady Mercury brought for us, and it was so fucking
Oh,
good.
right. Yeah, that's right, too. That's all right.
You high piece of shit.
I am one of those things.
You high piece of shit.
Make it sound so much meaner.
The voice of God reaching down, calling you an asshole. Like,
I gotta be impressed that I got his attention, to be honest. That'd be great.
Okay, Shane, now we're going to go to Dale Sally live at Public Square with more about that Balloonfest.
And Dale, the big question is, of course, what is this going to do to the Balloonfest tomorrow?
Well, everybody down here, Bob and Doreen, says the show will still go on. That is tomorrow. Tonight, of course, the workers have a long, long night ahead of them. You can see the larger balloons, the ones that were to lift the netting off the top of the bin and release the 1.5 million balloons. Those two have been decompressed up there right now. As a matter of fact, half of them have blown down. This is Tom Holowak, the site manager. The show is still on, Tom. How long is it going to take for you guys to fix this stuff?
Well, the most important thing is for us to get the tarp fixed now so the balloons will stay inside, and we think that we can do it in about 3 hours. We've got a lot of spare fabric. We've got the whole crew here. We've got our lifts. We've got the street closed down so we can work on it nonstop until it gets done.
Will you be inflating the balloons inside while you're repairing the tarp outside?
No, we have to repair the tarp now. We've got from now until 4 o'clock when the kids get here to fix the tarp, and we say that we can do it. Preliminary examination shows that there doesn't seem to be any damage to the net on the top. The helium lines and everything are in place and still seem to be okay. As far as these inflatables go, the folks at Pioneer Balloon down in Willard, who are providing all the small balloons, say that they can get us more inflatables to lift the net up.
All right, again, all of this stuff was built to take 60-mile-an-hour winds, and whatever specifications they put this scaffolding up to, it certainly worked tonight, didn't it?
It really did. I think the engineer who drew those designs is going to be happy he drew them just the way he did.
All right, well, we're going to have a lot of happy people out there to know that the Balloonfest, thank you, Tom Holowak, the site manager, Balloonfest 86 is still on for tomorrow, but again, the work will go on here all night long. Still 2 o'clock, that's what time they're talking about letting 1.5 million balloons out. We're still talking about the Guinness Book of World Records, but we're also talking about one long, wet night.
Thank you, Dick. Well, even though tonight's storm did some minor damage, just about everything is ready for Balloonfest 86, set to take place in downtown Cleveland tomorrow to benefit the United Way. Literally millions of balloons will be released on Public Square, which will set a world record. News Center 8's Don Olson was down on Public Square this evening, where some last-minute preparations were taking place.
Don't worry, Moses Cleveland has not been put in jail. This is the view from inside the huge bin that will hold 1.5 million balloons. Workers were making last-minute preparations this evening for the event to benefit the United Way.
Coming out, coming out!
The scaffolding, which takes up the entire southwest quadrant, took 10 men 2.5 weeks to construct.
We thought we started out just building a box to hold balloons in. We didn't realize we were building a building that had to meet every single city safety code and building code that you have to meet if you build a permanent building. And so this thing is built to withstand a 60-mile-an-hour wind.
Tomorrow morning, area high school students will begin arriving at 4 o'clock to begin the massive job of inflating the balloons one by one.
The 2,500 high school students will be inflating 4,500 balloons per minute for up to 6 hours.
Festivities begin on Public Square at noon. The balloon release is set for 6 minutes after 2. Certain downtown streets were closed at 7 this evening and will remain closed until after tomorrow's events. They are all of Public Square, Ontario from Prospect to St. Clair, Superior between East 9th and West 6th, and Euclid from East 9th all the way to Public Square. An event like this has never been held before, so no one is quite sure just how many people will show up. A good tip is to show up early. Don Olson, News Center 8, Cleveland.
Okay, should we continue with my episode?
Yes.
All right. So the year was 1986.
Oh, I wish I wasn't sure.
I wish I wasn't sure.
It was 1986. Fuck you, nerds. The goal was to set the Guinness World Record for simultaneously released helium balloons. The goal was reached. 1.5 million latex balloons were filled with helium, released, and captured under a giant net.
1.5 million balloons.
That's right. Yes, what you said. This is all organized by the United Way as a charity event, and the pictures taken were beautiful. But an unexpected event happened, and it caused more in damages than it raised.
Oh, no.
So I'm sure that Ood will post lots of pictures onto the social medias, because the pictures that were taken are pretty freaking
Of
cool.
a balloon massacre? Yes. I'll be posting all the pictures.
Yes, please post all the pictures of the balloon massacre. Okay. All right, so a little background. The stunt was coordinated by a Los Angeles-based company called Balloon Art by Treb. The owner, Treb Heining, spent 6 months preparing for the event. They constructed a gigantic mesh woven rectangle thing the size of a city block to hold all the balloons. It was 250 feet by 150 feet and 3 stories high. So like I said, it was pretty freaking gigantic. This gigantic thing was set up on the southwest corner of the public square in Cleveland. Inside this giant balloon cage, 2,500 students and other volunteers spent hours and hours filling the balloons with helium. They originally wanted 2 million balloons, but they stopped at around 1.5 million.
Because 2 million would be just too many, hey?
That's just ridiculous.
Apparently.
Yeah, 2 million balloons are just too many. We need to stop at 1.5. You don't want to break the 2 billion, we're not ready. Humanity is not ready to break the 2 million balloon barrier,
No, you have to keep it reasonable. It has to be reasonable.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Apparently each balloon has about 15 grams of lifting power. Yeah.
Wow. Imagine how much shit you could lift with that much power.
I want to kind of be tied to a whole bunch of balloons and do the up thing,
I've never seen that movie. Mr. Sage Murray keeps threatening me with it, but I'm gonna cry, so I'm not gonna watch it.
You're gonna cry.
Oh, the first 5 minutes of the movie is the most heartbreaking, emotional sob fest you will ever experience.
Yeah,
is it worse than Inside Out?
Oh, it's not oh, hey, we're gonna be a little bit sad here. It's you start watching the movie, you have 2 minutes of feeling good about yourself, then we take your heart out, rip it in half, and then we put it back in with his smallest Boy Scout and an old grumpy man.
And they just kind of they rip you down. At the very beginning, you get in there and they just tear you apart piece by piece. And then throughout the movie, they slowly rebuild you, better than you were before,
I have never heard such a metal description of the Pixar Disney movie.
Pixar, you done it again. Yes.
Okay, but is it worse than Inside Out?
Yeah, it's way sadder. You have to watch it.
I wouldn't know. I
Mr.
don't watch
Sagebrury
kids
said it
movies.
wasn't as sad.
Depends on who you are.
Maybe he has like a lot of empathy for brain chemicals. Maybe he grew up with some dopamine that he really got attached to. I don't know.
I don't know. But we both watched Inside Out, and both he and I were just like, just crying like the entire movie.
Oh yeah, you're gonna bawl your fucking eyes out when it comes to Up, but it's rewarding because it's a good watch. But you're gonna cry.
So the kids would sell the balloons for $2 for $1 to benefit the United Way, which is very nice. So there was a rate.
$2 for $1?
2 balloons for
That's
$1.
a fair bit of money, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so they raised quite a bit of money because they blew up almost 1.5 million balloons. So there was rain in the forecast, so they ended up releasing the balloons early on September 27th, 1986 at around like 10 to 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, live from downtown Cleveland, it's Big Chuck and Little John in front of the biggest happening around.
Okay, thank you, John. The big news is the record-breaking, the Guinness Book of World's Record-breaking balloon release, United Way balloon release, and with us is the mastermind behind the whole affair, Mr. Treb Heining. And Treb, welcome to Cleveland.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Treb, you were responsible for the Guinness Book of Records, which now stands the 1.2 million balloon release at Disneyland in 1985, December.
That's correct. We did that one back in December, and it was the sound barrier in terms of 1 million. A lot of people said you can't release 1 million balloons, and once that was done, now people are thinking, well, how many more can be done?
And I noticed they stopped blowing balloons up, and that means we must be well over 1.2 million.
We are easily over 1,400,000 balloons at this point.
So that means you are going to break 2 world records in less than a year.
In less than a year, and and I'm real tired of blowing up balloons.
Okay. Hey, how much time did it take to plan this event to break a world's record like this?
It's something that has been in the planning stages since March of this year. So a lot of technical research and research through the city, permits. It's endless. It's absolutely astonishing to try and get something like this off, let alone waiting for good weather.
So this is a big plus for Cleveland.
Oh, it's something that, they predicted 70% chance of showers today, and I think this is a prime example of what United Way is trying to do in terms of saying, it's Cleveland, it's your time. It's time to say yes. It's time to say it is a happening city. We are on the move. It's no longer the butt of jokes or anything. I've been in this city now for 6 months, and I absolutely love it. My wife and I have even talked about moving here, and our friends in LA think we're nuts. But it is a wonderful place. If I had money to invest, this is where I'd be invested.
Very, very good. Thank
Treb,
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, we were just talking to Treb, and I never did quite understand until now how the balloons were going to, the net was going to be raised. Treb, there are some large balloons on the far end. Can you tell us exactly how the net will be raised?
Right. Those are 10-foot inflatables. They're filled with helium, and the net itself will be lifted by the balloons themselves. We have about 10,000 to 15,000 pounds of lift just in the small balloons. So the big balloons are really to keep the net held up. Once the balloons start coming out from underneath the net, that will keep the net raised up.
I see.
Okay. How much stress is on that net?
Oh, probably equal the amount of stress that's on my shoulders right now.
You ready?
Ready. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here they
Take it
go.
away, liftoff.
Amazing. And the far end is up, and there they go, John.
The Guinness Book of World Records has just been broken in Cleveland. Over 1,500,000 balloons going up in the air at this very, very moment. Look at the cloud below. We did it!
We did it, John. There it goes. It's completely covering the terminal tower.
Up.
Look at that.
I want to sing up, and away. It is awesome, ladies and gentlemen, to actually be down here and see the multi-colors that are going up in the air at this moment.
So everything is okay so far, but things are about to kind of go a little sideways.
1.5 million balloons. What's the worst that can happen?
The fuck could go wrong? So
Think
they
of all
released
the fish and the wildlife and everything else once those balloons come down.
Yes. Okay.
Oh,
Well, they
no.
released the giant balloon cage. Normally, the balloons are able to stay in the air long enough to kind of deflate naturally before they come back to the Earth. Yes, there are hella problems with any kind of balloon release, but that is another episode for another time. So fuck your question.
Yeah.
Can I say one quick thing? Can I just interject and say one thing?
Oh, yeah. Off you go.
Release the balloons.
I love it.
That?
Okay. That was really good. That was fun.
Good. I don't regret that at all.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, so basically what happened is the Balloonfest balloons ran into rain and a big cold front and ended up dropping down to the ground, still totally inflated. They completely clogged the land and waterways of Northeast Ohio, were even found 2 days later on the shores of Lake Erie on the Canadian side of the lake. So
So if all those were flooded,
if
all those were flooded, that probably meant that ditches were flooding and basements were flooding and things like that. Christ.
Balloons are fucking everywhere. Okay, so now comes the sad stuff. 2 fishermen named Broderick and Salzer went out on the 26th and were reported missing by their families on the 27th, which is the day of the balloon release. Their boat was spotted, but because of all the balloons floating in the water, it was basically impossible to spot a person's head bobbing in the water.
Oh,
Oh, no.
Yeah. So the Coast Guard, they really, really tried to find these missing men, but eventually they suspended the search on September 29th.
Christ.
The bodies of the 2 men...
Well, and I was thinking about that, even if they had life jackets on, the life jackets are brightly colored, but, so is all the balloons. All balloons are, circus colors, brightly colored shit, so, Christ.
Yeah. There was no fucking way they were seeing anything in there.
I found a picture of it, of some people going out in their boat with the balloons. And it's those pictures of the beaches in Florida where there's just thousands and thousands of people? That, but it's all balloons.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
there's no fucking way they were finding anyone.
Yeah, try to find a human head.
Christ.
So they eventually had to suspend the search on September 29th. The bodies of the 2 men ended up washing ashore. The partner of one of the fishermen sued the United Way of Cleveland and Treb, which is the company that did the balloon thing, for $3.2 million and ended up settling on an undisclosed amount. I couldn't find what they actually settled for. So that wasn't everything that happened. That was the main sad stuff, but that wasn't everything. So a bunch of super duper fancy and expensive horses were spooked and hurt themselves, and the owners were able to successfully sue for $100,000 in damages.
And if you're a horse, you don't know what's going on. You just see thousands of these brightly colored orbs charging towards you. If you were a horse and you didn't understand what a balloon was, it would be like War of the Worlds. Aliens are descending upon you and you don't know what they're capable of and shit.
Exactly. It would have been awful. So yeah, they got $100,000 for these fucking expensive, fancy-ass horses. And then the Burke Lakefront Airport was also shut down for half an hour because of the balloons. Hilarious balloon apocalypse.
Yeah, that lake picture, it's so wow. There's a boat and you just see all these balloons in the lake. And it's you wouldn't be able to get anywhere through that,
No, you can't see shit with all those fucking weird-ass balloons.
Well,
they did break the Guinness Book of World Records, though.
Well, the weird part to me, too, is, because of the way that, human mind or, human brains work, when you see this whole pile of balloons, it's not like they're, multicolored and rainbow. It's just kind of a weird orange blob.
See, my concern is I think we make too many products with no concern for their end of life.
Yeah.
That's always kind of my thought. It's I don't know. I'm sitting on all these VHS tapes, for example, because you can't do shit with them,
No.
The magnetic tape has metal on it, which could be harmful to the environment if it leaks into the ground, into the water supply and such. So it's technically considered a hazardous material in that respect. The plastic pieces, well, you got to find someone who would try to extract the plastics at least, and then do something with that magnetic tape. You can't do anything. And balloons, in my mind, are very much similar. It's they float up or they pop or whatever, and then what do you have at the end of it? You got a piece of plastic that you didn't need that now is going to interfere with the environment or the waste system or the water system or some animal.
And like these things aren't going to degrade or go away or rot. Like, I'm sure pieces of these millions of balloons that are released are going to be, clogging the throats of ducks and wildlife for years and years to come. We don't know the total impacts.
Well, there's exactly, and like I don't know. It's just. Like all those balloons, I'm sure some of them have popped and some of them have sunk and they're sitting at the bottom of Lake Erie now. And, one day they're going to affect something.
They're colorful, they're fun, and lately they're very popular in major releases at celebrations and memorials. But what's not so fun when they come down and get into our Great Lake and even our wildlife. Celebrations, memorials, conventions, and never forget the great or not so great record-breaking massive release of '86. If you haven't let one go yourself, you've probably seen something like this. And while all of the aforementioned were well-intentioned, things didn't always end up that way. Here.
They're man-made debris that ends up in our waterways.
Sarah Orlando, program manager for Ohio Clean Marinas.
Even if it's biodegradable, it can take days or weeks.
Told me balloon releases have already had an impact on our Great Lake.
The Lake Erie Nature and Science Center in Bay Village, they have a wonderful wildlife rehabilitation program, and so they often see wildlife that come in due to entanglement from balloon releases.
So she understands why the nationwide straw debate has now blown up into something else.
So if we as humans can do our part to keep these, whether it's through a ban or whether it's voluntarily doing our part, that's how we impact our environment. That's how we keep a healthy lake.
Clevelanders we talked to today,
I just feel like balloons make the party.
Not in love with the idea of an outright ban on releases, like in California, or a straight-up ban on balloons in general, currently in New Shoreham, Rhode Island. But they did understand the problem and the need for a new way of handling all of this hot air.
Something that we should be aware of, and we should try to, take more action to try to help stop the pollutants we release.
Just pop them and then throw them away when you're done, and don't ban them though.
I couldn't find a town or city locally that's putting an outright ban on these, but there are quite a few petitions and local groups that are urging people to stop these major releases just for the sake of our Great Lake. Reporting in Cleveland tonight, I'm Tara Molina, News 5.
It's actually interesting. I'd read an article where Earth is now creating like a plastic rock. Like we have now created so much plastic that it has now been incorporated into like Earth's geological processes.
That's actually
disgusting.
One of the. I think that's one of the markers now, because there's a in geology they talk about different epochs and they have all these names for them, right? Like the Eocene and the Miocene, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's some geologists that are actually saying that we should be renaming our current epoch as the Anthropocene, as in the age of humans. And one of the markers was the fact that if a geologist in future were to dig the rocks of our timeline, they would indeed find this plastic concretion rock, and it could be an actual marker of humans were around in this span of time.
I don't know. Like, I guess even if all these bad things with the balloons didn't happen, like, is it worth all that waste? Like, if all these balloons were just deposited in a landfill, was it worth the gimmick to raise that money to create all that waste and to like pollute all that stuff? Who knows?
Okay, but no, it wasn't. But it was 1986.
Other things that happened in 1986, as I'm looking up, the Emergency Wetlands Resources Act was passed. Tetraethyl lead was phased out completely in the U.S. And, Chernobyl also happened in 1986. So it just wasn't... It was kind of like a so-so year for the environment.
Let it get...
I was conceived in 1986.
His previous statement stands.
It 100% does. Sorry about it.
Sweet.
All right, well, that's the end of my episode. Sorry it was short.
Our episodes are like ropes. They're as long as you need them to be.
Except when they're not.
Shut up, Richard Bigley.
I'm sorry.
So for Occultae Veritatis, I am Sage Fairy.
Ooh,
Along with
Gallifrey.
Richard Bigley.
joining us in studio.
Good
Love
night.
you. Good night.
Alrighty. I can't resist. This is going to hurt your ears, and it's going to be worth it in the end. Playing us out this episode, it is Andrew Huang. That is spelled H-U-N-G. So this is Andrew Huang's cover of 99 Luft Balloons Played with Balloons. Enjoy, and see you in the after show. Hey, it's Ood Gallifrey. You know, a lot of times here on the after show, I advertise our Patreon, and our Patreon is a great tool to help us buy new equipment, go on field trips, you know, pay for all our online services we use every month to research, host, edit, do all the things we need to do. But that's not the only way you can help us. Now, we live in a capitalistic hellscape. I've said that many times, so helping with money is not always applicable or reasonable or available, and we don't hold that against anybody. So here are the ways you can help our podcast without spending a single dime. Number one, you're already doing it. Listening. A lot of times producing a podcast, hell, even recording a podcast sounds a lot like shouting into the void. And it's a blessing that there's people out there that are willing to listen to us and, you know, still think that we're, you know, entertaining, informative, dare I say, something you look forward to listening to. Having people that are waiting to listen to us is so much motivation to keep this project moving forward. So thank you for just listening. Number two, recommend this to your family and friends. We beat this drum a lot, but it's really the best way that we get into new ear holes. You know, we can advertise on Twitter. People can stumble across us on podcast apps. Maybe somebody Googles something about one of the cases we covered and they find our website. But the best way to get new listeners is by having somebody that already listens to us, that already likes us, advocate to their friends and family about us. And you know, podcasts are still sort of a new thing, especially with people that haven't really gotten into podcasts yet. So if they start talking about something you think that is like something we covered, or you think they would enjoy something we've covered, tell them about us. Even if it means politely asking to see their phone, downloading them a podcast app, and subscribing to us manually. Show them how podcasts work. Get them addicted to us. If you're on Reddit, or on a Facebook group, or on any other social media website and they're talking about something that's related to something we talked about, hit them up. Say, hey, there's this podcast I listened to. They take a little getting used to, but they did a pretty good job of covering the case you're talking about. Check them out. Yeah, free recommendations like that are priceless. Number 3, leaving us reviews, not only on Apple Podcasts, but on whatever service you use. I know there's new podcast services coming out every day, and they all have their own little review systems, and most of them are constructed in a way that new reviews of podcasts bump them up the ratings. For some reason that's beyond me. I'm sure if I took a computer science class it would make more sense, but for some reason beyond me, when somebody rates a podcast, the little algorithm gods believe that that podcast should be driven up the charts and be seen by more people. So that's another way you can help us. Number 4, providing feedback. This relates to number 1 a little bit about shouting into the void. We really are just 4 dipshits from Saskatchewan, Canada. And we tend to have pretty high thoughts of ourselves. We tend to think that we're pretty smart, pretty clever, pretty well informed, but we could easily be wrong about something, easily misinformed. We could easily be leaving out some context or missing some information. So number 4, what you can do is provide us feedback. You can send a voice clip by recording your voice and emailing it to ovfeedback@gmail.com, or simply writing us an email about something we covered or a thought you had to ovfeedback@gmail.com. We love reading stuff from fans. It helps us not be such an enclosed capsule. It helps us be more of a conversation. Instead of just us in front of the mic speaking to you, it's more like the conversation is circulating. And we've enjoyed all the emails we've gotten in the past, critical, praising, or otherwise. And you guys are too nice to us. You need to send us more critical emails. We're not as smart as our ratio of good to bad emails suggests we are. We need to be criticized. Number 5 and final, engage with us on social media. Just like on the podcast app, the more engagement we have, the more conversation, the more likes, retweets, hearts. I don't know what else there is, but any more engagement we have, it drives us up the charts, puts us in front of more eyes, and helps more people discover us. You can follow us on Instagram at OVPodcast. And you can follow the main podcast account at Occultae V on Twitter. That's OCCULTAEV on Twitter. And all our other socials are on there. Every one of the hosts has a Twitter. So yeah, engage with us on social media. Hit us up. Talk to us. We're always on there. We're addicted to our phones like anybody else. And, shooting the shit with us on social media, sharing our dumbass memes, reading our facts, commenting on recent episodes, calls to action, stuff like that, drives us up the charts. Tells the algorithm gods that more people want to see us. Yep. So, those are all the ways you can help us without spending a dime. But you're already doing the most important thing. Letting us into your ear holes each and every week. And we sure as hell appreciate it. From Occultae Veritatis, I'm Ood Gallifrey. Make sure to purchase an extra charge cord for your cellular device. The one you have is probably worn out, and you don't want to be caught without a way to communicate, especially in times of isolation like these. Have a wonderful night.